next, I'm gonna call out to one of my great inspirations as a writer, Kim, to the stage.
Yeah, so today I'm gonna read a short story, so it's gonna be like a bit lengthy, more than a poem, but I hope you enjoy it. Open windows. Before you left the house last night, I had forgotten to close the windows like you always asked me to. Once I heard the sound of the front gates grinding open in its iron tracks, I remembered that you were coming to see me, and I had left the windows open. Naturally, you knew the ins and outs of this house, how the front door never shut as tightly as you'd like. That's why you wedged a piece of folded newspaper by the hinges the first night we spent here, because you were scared that bad men would break in. The method to close that door which you perfected, to lift the weight of the door by the handle and give it a hard pull into its grooves until there was a sound of wood scraping on wood. The back windows were kept shut to keep tiny insects from entering. If not, they would feed off the light in the kitchen, worshipping the solitary beam as if their lives depended on it. You would wake up in the morning, enter the kitchen, and realize dead insects were clinging onto the soles of your feet. The only reason you came home was to leave the papers by the bedside table, empty your drawer under mine, and check the shoe rack for any slippers you may have left behind. Sitting in the hallway, I wondered if you would take something of mine. You always liked that I wore brassieres made of white cotton, minimal padding, cups that made my breasts look like conical spears, full straps and waist clinchers down to my navel that captured my lungs in a small box of my chest. They made me look smaller than I was, kept together, wound tight in bandages until the clothes I wore merely covered the sculpted figure under it. The day I was emptying the wardrobe for your things, I found a jasmine-scented box you brought home from India. A fine cashmere scarf meticulously wrapped in ribbons in a cream box that felt like lavender skin. Running my hands across the face of the box, I could feel that night in it. You setting it on the dinner table and asking me to put it on, draping the patterned scarf over my shoulders and then lapping it around my neck. You ran your hands up and down my back like you had to touch all of me for it to be real. This memory seeps in like an image on watery reflection in my mind, and I wish it didn't happen. I tried it on in our bedroom, with the door locked and the mirror covered with a bath towel. The fabric fell smoothly over my body, lapping over my belly and midriff. The flowery arabesque patterns bulged over my breast and swallowed what slender shape there was to show. I dared to undrape the mirror, pulling the towel away slowly until it unceremoniously fell from its own weight. It was frightening, a naked skeletal image wrapped in soft cashmere flowers like a bird molting its feathers. What hair was left on my scalp merely held on with frail grip from what the chemotherapy had done to me. But still, I gawked at the image lovingly and in awe. Parts of me were still here, though you would not recognize them because they were smudged by the outlying reach of death. And still, I was present in this mirror that I had gotten ready in every morning, to rouge my lips for you, to blush my cheeks, and bleach my skin, all for the sake of keeping a man. I thought maybe you would remember how everything felt that night. Run your hands up and down my spine like the book I was pretending to read as I sat in the hall, waiting for you to finish leaving me. I read the middle parts of the book, mid-sentences with a questionable tone, as if I had been there all along. I called on my sister to console me this morning. That was why the windows were open. I called her in a dizzy panic of how to tell my parents that you were leaving. Perhaps to tell them the truth might be the best. That you were leaving me for a woman who was my identical but still living. And it was okay that you brought her to meet me. You held her hand close to yours, sat her down in front of me and said, "This is her. The woman who makes me happy when I am exhausted of you. It's okay. We're adults, and I can see she is bright and beautiful, and I could almost say I am happy for you, but I am not. I am devastated. This is what it feels like to be left behind, to want to wear another woman's skin, her teeth as rings, her hair as shimmering cloth, if it meant you loving me again." Sitting in the kitchen, I could not help but sob into the phone until it was full of static. All my sister could do was listen to the spells of silence between my breaths. I disconnected the call, as my chest throbbed with the rhythm of rain raging on tin roofs. A thick buzz crowded my head and enveloped me. Air was escaping my lungs like thoughts taking flight from my mind. Everything was blank for a moment, and in that moment, I could feel hatred in my bones. All I could ask of you was time, and what little vantage of that was lost when you declared me all but dead. I opened the windows and sat with my head perched outside and breathed thick, succulent air. The air was scented with unkept grass and wet slime that coated the fallen leaves, like childhood nostalgia of waning monsoon springs. A starling began to call in the trees, and I decided it would be better spent cleaning out the kitchen drawers than crying. Needless to say, I couldn't sleep that night. My skull was full of rattles, shaking, twitching, as if it was some natural call to keep me awake. I could not roll, nor change the position of my head. The more I tried, the more I thought maybe if I had someone to hold me down and pin me to reality, then it would have been easier. I gave up and decided to go downstairs, to have some water instead of beating my head in and trying to sleep. The house was dark, except the strands of light that bounced from one reflective edge to the next. An iridescent glow reached beyond the glass tile wall that divided the living room from the kitchen. I could see the solitary beam of light that was left on, flickering from the haze of the glass wall. Wandering into the kitchen, I looked up to see a swarm of insects darting towards the white light. Flying and changing direction in sudden motion, they worshipped the light as they dropped to their deaths, hurtling to what must have been a 1,000-foot drop to the floor. Hundreds of small black specks were sprinkled on the counter and over the sink. Then I remembered why we had kept the windows closed. With each small insect that fell, I could see 100 more taking its place by the light. They worshipped the beam while it flickered death to the sound of thousands of wings beating to keep themselves alive. I could feel rough grains on my sole, the soles of my feet, with some getting trapped between my toes as I walked further forward. The smell of crushed exoskeletons and silk-thin wings rose to my nostrils like maraschino cherries in red syrup. Flicking off the switch behind the counter, I watched as they fell from the absence of light, showering in a spectacular rain of sudden death on my shoulders. From where I stood, it was all too familiar, devotion to a false god, and so I forgave myself for the wrong you did me, and left those hundreds of insects for dead, and kept the windows open as I liked them to be. Thank you.